I feared my success. I think we all do because we're never done with achieving our success. And to move into it means that we have to become our authentic self. And that's where the fear really comes in for all of us. See, because if we had really accomplished that, we would be happy, we would be abundant, we would have great relationships, and we would have changed the world. But we don't always do that because our consciousness has to change in order for those things to occur. And then we have to become vulnerable enough to discover and own who we are. And not everyone will do that. And we come into the world all the same. Every single person. You come in, you're born, all you have is consciousness. That's it. You have nothing else. There's no one who has more or less than any other person. It's just that it gets developed in different ways. And most times we're developing it from something that was old, something that we were taught from our parents or society or our friends, where we grew up, our countries, whatever it is, but it's limited. And we have a universal consciousness, however, that tells us all that we are all equal, that we're all meant to be in the world, and we have a grand purpose. But we have the old programming. I was listening to a podcast today. This is Jay Shetty's podcast on purpose, and he was interviewing Dr. Gabor Mate. And Mate. And so as I'm listening to that, and I love both of them so much because they both inspire me. For Jay, when he talks about being this monk and then all of that, I said, yeah, I felt like a monk for a lot of my life. And I was also a hermit for a long time. And and Dr. Mate, he has this way of seeing the both sides of everything, and he's got so much experience in study and all of that. So that always inspires me. And what they both said is that, yeah, you don't want to be vulnerable, and that's the problem. We don't want to become our authentic selves. And he brought up something. I was watching another video, and he says, when you're speaking to someone and just speaking and talking, and you're trying to answer a question, why do you change? Why do you change your answer? Why does that happen? It's because we're worried about what someone else is going to think. And so we can't come to that place of owning our authentic self. And that is a process of consciousness. And it is a journey that we each have to take if we want to achieve that success. Now, I know when I bring up the word success, everybody goes to money. That's not success, because we've seen plenty of examples where people have tons of money and they're not happy. Success, and one of my clients, one of my members in the program, I just saw this today, gave a great definition. He says, knowing that my life has mattered and I've made a difference in the world. That's success, because then you're starting to feel confident. Anytime you don't feel confident, it's because you just are not accepting your authentic self. Any kind of trepidation, fear, it's always because you can't accept who you are. And that is a process. And we know that process because we've gone through it. We've gone through it in school. We might have gone to other coaches. We might have taken programs. We might have done a whole bunch of things to get to this place of accepting who we are. But we have to take into consideration that we have been programmed. We have been programmed from everything that came before. And unless we release that, we can't achieve that success by becoming and owning and loving our authentic self. That's energy. Our world is created by energy. That's all that it is. And we can see from all the studies that have been done scientifically, you can understand all of this. But for us to understand that about ourselves typically takes a little bit of time, depending on the depth of the programming that has been in our DNA, because that's where it's coming from. We have a unique genetic code. Now, Dr. Mate wrote a book called The Myth of Normal. And I love it. You guys should find that. I haven't read it because I just heard about it, but it's called The Gift of Normal. We're not supposed to be normal. We're supposed to become ourselves. But see, what we do is we think that there's some other examples of who we're meant to be, and then we hold ourselves back because we are trying to find that ideal instead of going within and owning who we are. And even with me, it took a long time. I never wanted to be myself. I've talked about this often, but then I got hit in the head today because I got a message that said, no, you can no longer do that. Let me tell you a story. I've had a really long life. I've done so many things. I have gone through more challenges and difficulties and hardships and things than most humans. So I do understand loss. I've lost everything many times, and I've gained so much many times. I've made all the money. I've done all of that. At 19 years old, I left college. I just walked out at some point in college. I said, I don't know what I want to do. But then a couple years later, I had a job. I was making a lot of money. I was even making more money than my parents at one point when I did that. Didn't make any sense. And then I went on later. I created another business where I created, that business has gone on now to create more, a couple $1 million. So I know it's not about the money. It's about how fulfilled do you feel? How happy are you? Because you've heard the saying, you can't take it with you. You can't, what are you going to do with the money once you're gone, unless you're leaving it for your kids and all of that? That's another thing. But that's not who you are. That's not what's going to make you feel that you have mattered, that your life made a difference, and that you lived for a reason. And that's the place where I am now, because I want to know that I lived for a reason, because there had to be a reason that I went through all the challenges that I did. There had to be a reason that I received all the information that I did. And that's what we all do. We give it back to others. That's how our world evolves. But we live at a very different time now. And this is why I am speaking about this. Nothing that we are seeing in our world is ever going to be the same, which it typically isn't anyway, but this is a particularly different time. And I happened to receive the information which was challenging for me to accept, because it came in a very different way. It came through my consciousness. It came from me accessing higher states of wisdom and consciousness to be able to heal everything in my body. Physical things. Louise Hay wrote a book called You Can Heal Your Life. And I admire her as well, because we have similar paths. She was a Christian Scientist, as I was raised that way in the beginning, but we had all these physical ailments. But then you start to understand that your physical diseases, difficulties, challenges, and all that, it typically connected to you disowning some part of yourself. I pulled out a message that I received in 1997, I think it was, and it was talking about my skin conditions, because I had many of them. I lived at the dermatologist. But in that message, I was told to look at. What am I hiding? Why am I not being myself? That's what was going on. It wasn't that there was something, some thing I had in me. No, it was my mental processes that was causing that. And I never went to the dermatologist again, because that healed. And I can give you so many of them. And people have asked me about those healing things, and I'll talk about more of them. And if you've read my book, you would probably understand my book on fear, overcoming fear. You would understand more. I did a podcast too on Inside Wink. That's the podcast there. And the two ladies there who were beautiful women. And when I get onto the podcast, they're sitting there and they're holding my book and they're looking at me in disbelief. Like, how could you be this happy? How could you be this person after you've gone through all of this stuff that they read? And that wasn't even all of it. But see, that's the point. I want people to understand you can overcome anything. And sometimes that's theory. I know you hear a lot of things about mindset and consciousness, and all of that comes from different places. I've lived it, so that I know that it's true. But it was challenging for me to accept that I had done that. And in 2020, I knew the world was changing. And people are looking, because I've known for a long time. I started shifting my business many years ago. People who know me probably have seen that. But I knew that I had something to give to others that would cause our world to become better if they became better. If they loved who they were, if they become successful, prosperous, and happy, then we would have a very different world. And I knew that I had all of that information. But then that self-acceptance, self-belief is always challenging. We think we're an imposter. When I first started receiving Wilhelm, that's my spiritual guide. That's the information I've received since 1988. But when I first started doing it, I didn't want to tell anybody, because it didn't make sense. How could I be receiving consciousness and shifting everything? And then 20 years later, it started to be revealed that that's what I was doing. And but that was also challenging, because the minute I started publishing something, I was accused of plagiarism. And I think the first one was, they said, "Are you copying Neil Donald Walsh? He wrote the book Conversations with God." I said, "No," but it caused me to think, am I an imposter? Did I do that? No. but that was the information he received. When you come to this higher level of understanding and consciousness, it sounds like they all the same information. And because it's a consciousness that we can all ascend to, but not everyone will do that, which is why we're seeing the world the way that it is now. Another thing, I'll tell you this story because I want people to understand why I created my work. In 2020, I knew the world was changing. My messages started changing every day, and people have seen that. And but then in 2021, I discovered that I was given everything to help us move through this period, meaning help us transition this change, this big transition, which my guys have said it's a restructuring. Everything was going to be broken down. We were going to see financial institutions change. We were going to see the economic things change in our world. We've seen so many strikes. We were going to have wars. We've had a couple of them. That didn't make sense either. We might get a leader like a Hitler again. I wrote all of these things many years ago, but most probably couldn't hear that because we typically don't see things until they're right in front of our faces, and then things implode because we're not paying attention. Well, I decided I can't do that anymore. And again, I was called out on that. But in 2021, then I'm on a walk. Many people have heard this story, but I heard very clearly, we gave you everything you needed to know in 2012. That made no sense, but then I come in and find that information on my computer. And then I remember, oh yeah, in 2012, people were really responding to those messages that I was receiving, and I didn't understand why. We develop in our consciousness over time, and we don't know what we have, and we can't figure that out or discover it until we become willing to look within. I was reading things from Carl Jung, because we have very similar kind of personality. He was introverted and very intuitive like I was, and so, but we hold back because we don't want people to think we're a lunatic, as he said, or when we aren't sure that these things will work for everyone, except they did. So in 2021, when I was told I was given everything, it was just too challenging for me to believe. Even though I am sitting here and I'm going to be 73 in a couple, 10 days or something, and I'm thinking, how did I heal everything and become this person now and so vital? And even doctors are confused about that. But I said it was because of mindset work. That's all that it is ever. The only thing I couldn't do is become more vulnerable and tell you, because that's that intuitive part. But I also have always been the person, I want to know that what I'm giving my clients, I want to know that it works. I did that when I created my $1 million singing business. I did that. I created a program. I redid it 3 times because I said, I want to make sure people understand this. I want to make sure that they get it. And I did the same thing with this work as well. But in 2021, I decided I must know if this is really accurate, if I didn't just make this up. And I put a bunch of people in a program called 4 Weeks to Your Best Life, and they blew me away because they came out changed. One person, and you'll see all of this, I'll leave in the description of this video because I want people to have it, some of the things that they said. But still, it took me a while to accept that because they're saying, I've done Tony Robbins, Jack Canfield, I've done all these other things, but this worked faster. I've healed things quicker. You'll hear all of that. And I don't typically go around talking about my successes. I've had tons of them, but that's not what I want. What I care about more is the world. That's true. I've always been this person. I was speaking in my group yesterday saying one of the people that really inspired me also was Bertrand Russell, another philosopher guy, because he cared about the world, and he knew that if people didn't kind of understand who they were and could live the lives that they wanted to have, we would just keep blowing each other up. We would just keep having more wars, which has gone on. And so when I saw the war, I knew about, I talked about when Ukraine happened, but then when Israel and Gaza happened, I'm thinking, oh, I was told that as well. You can go back and listen to my older channeling sessions, and everything that I'm saying, everything that's occurring in the world has come through in one of those channeling sessions over the last couple of years. I didn't even want to do those because that made me become much more vulnerable, but now they're a lot of fun, and I love doing it because I get more information as well. But we're moving through an evolutionary change in our world, and the way that we get through it is by you becoming successful. And I have that plan to take everyone there. And that's why someone said yesterday when I posted, it was on his site, I posted a video and talking about my plan to save the world. And they came back and they said, we love your passion. Your passion is so inspiring. I said, my passion is real because I know I can do it. Because the only reason that we couldn't do it is that people choose to stay where they are, not embody their authentic self, because everybody has a right to be here. Everybody has a purpose. Everyone has something that they were born with that they're meant to bring into the world. And that's an energetic shift they will make when they decide to own that. But again, mine was not normal. And when I saw the message, today is the 21st of October, but I happened to look at the message for tomorrow, which is the 22nd, and I'm going to share it because this is what happened. When I was told that I had all this information, I was also said, we're going to give you things on dates that you can pay attention because our consciousness doesn't accept all the time. So things were given to me over dates so that we would look at it and say, oh, yes, that makes sense now. It's how we study everything. You can think about this in school. You study something and then you have a recall and then you start to own it. That's what happens. So I'm going to read this message so you'll know why I'm talking about success today, because it is what we all can do. You can see October 22nd, 2020. You fear success. Yes, we mean you. For you have cultivated a fear of the unknown. So you don't want to change, so that would leave you vulnerable to that unknown you have feared. Success is a subjective word, but you know what it means for you, and what it means for each soul is the experience of complete empowerment. You will not have that in this lifetime or any other, for you exist in a continual state of evolvement, as does your world. We are also still referring to the current restructuring of you, your world, and the United States. Please do not judge yourself when you discover the manner in which you have conducted your life, for it is a natural progression of evolution. Over the decades, we have given Roger many messages on success, and each one of them has led to this moment in time. Yesterday, Roger had his brilliant webinar as we predicted because he was in his element and owned every moment of it. Roger then had a call with his family later, which went really well despite previous conflict fears. Still, Roger trusted his intuition and injected his natural benevolent self into the mix. However, during the call, Roger attempted to explain his new awareness and found it challenging at best because others don't need to understand your journey for you to do so. And one of those ways, Roger, and probably you, have held yourself back is by needing others to understand you. Then Roger noticed another situation that he knew he created through being overly generous in an attempt to cause himself to feel worthy. Many of you do that. Many of you do that one until you decide enough is enough. You are collectively deciding you no longer want to devalue yourself, and you will succeed. We have spoken of this before, but it will make more sense now. Rogers held an emotional memory of a comment from his mother, which he turned into a way of avoiding success. The phrase he hears was, "Don't be so selfish." Roger later interpreted that to mean, give everything away. He created an imbalance within himself that manifested in various forms yesterday. The solution to this, to the healing of your world's current conditions, is not to judge another, but decide to regain your power. The United States will lead this restructuring, but it will take time, as it will within you. But the good news now is you want to do so despite your fear of change. As you study this message over the next few days, more illumination will emerge. I was talking about the podcast that Jay did, and he told the story. He said he discovered something with his wife, that he had these patterns within him where he was always trying to give and give because it was coming from a place of not feeling worthy. And that's what I did too. And those are old programming. is that we have, and we have to move beyond that. It's not about we don't want to give, but we're supposed to also give first to ourselves. That's authenticity. When we can love who we are and accept that, everything changes in our lives. And sometimes it takes a while. And again, I had to go back and I found a lot of quotes from Carl Jung talking about this, because he went through all this experiment with everyone before he could put his stuff out, because it didn't, he wanted to make sure. And now everyone has known and followed much of his work. And that's what I'm doing as well. You will hear people who were in the program who have done amazing things. And this is where I am putting all of my life. In the group yesterday, there were a couple of people that were stopped. And you will think about this. In the program, I have questions, things we have to go through, assignments. And one of them is asking the question, who are you? Again, you'll hear Jay and Dr. Mate talk about that in the podcast. That's the most challenging question for anyone to ask. Who are you? But also, it could change. It could change tomorrow, because you're never done. As that message said, we're always evolving. So who you were yesterday may not be who you are going to be now. And for many people now, none of you are feeling like you're who you were before, because the entire world is changing. A lot of people won't really feel that. There are certain people who are more sensitive, who have felt the energies of everything happening in the world and wondering, what can I do? What you can do is decide to become successful, decide to become happy, decide to own who you are. And that's the work that I'm doing. That's the only thing I'm doing. And in the group, I said to them, I had to I didn't apologize, but I had to become honest and transparent. I said, listen, when I asked that question about what do I want, I go, well, now the only thing I want to do is come to these groups, because they fulfill me. We sit there and we have such a great time. We are uplifting ourselves and we're uplifting our world, because we know our energy is doing something. And so as we work through those limitations that exist within all of us, and if we do it collectively, we create a very different world, as that message just said. But we are going to see, and I just want to give you this, which is why I'm doing this today. It's going to look a little turbulent for a few weeks or whatever it's going on, especially next week. However, as we come to greater awareness within ourselves and decide we're not going to hate ourselves, we're going to start loving other people, and we're going to start to becoming successful, and we'll start owning who we are. And that's all I'm doing. Again, this I'm not retiring. I'm retiring from my old self. And I think that was breaking the habit of being yourself, as Dr. Joe Dispenza says. That's exactly what I'm doing. What we all must do now, because it's only the old stuff. And I'm going to say this because I want you to understand, we have a lot of things going on in the world, and we're looking at Israel and Gaza, or the Palestinians, and you can look at that. And when you go back and check that history, it just changes back and forth, because we don't let go of our grievances. And grievances we all have, because that's part of that DNA, and it's old and it's ancient. And unless we release it from ourselves, we can't experience the lives we want to have, and we won't see the world we want to have either. And so that's my dedication. And so I'm going to give up my fear of being successful, and I'm going to become really successful. I wrote a check to myself many years ago for $10 million. And I said, I'm going to take that because other people have done that. I said, I know I'm going to do it, but it's not going to be for me. Just, no, money was not the thing that I had ever gone for. I've never gone for that, only that in my life. I've actually had trouble bringing it to me, because I said, as that message said, I've given everything away. But now it's going to become so much more, because I know that I have something so valuable for people who really want to succeed, who really want to be happy, and who don't want to give up. That's the other thing that happens. People will start to move on this journey, and then it gets too confronting, because you have to look at yourself. Well, why wouldn't you? And that's, again, what Carl Jung said. He knew that too. Most people don't want to look at themselves. They don't want to look inside. And I'm saying that what's within you is the best thing ever. And I've seen that with every single person that I've worked with. And I know that if I can cause more to see that within themselves, we will have a very different world.